Mine was the realization that graduating kindergarten wasn't the end of school. It took my parents a while to get 5-year-old me out of that bad mood on the drive home and convince me that I would still be going until I was 17. I still have a photo of me glowering in the back seat with my graduation cap on. Story 1. When I was a kid, I thought high school was going to be a lot like Saved by the Bell, where we would have a Max's to hang out, or Beverly Hills 90210, where everyone had sports cars and looked like grown adults. Story 2. I understood life isn't fair. After all, it's too chaotic to be. And that's what parents do, right? Make it as fair as possible for their kids until they can fight for themselves. But what really got me was the slow dawning realization that most people like life being unfair because they figured out how to ride that unfairness for themselves. Story 3. That most adults don't get summer vacation. My mom was a teacher and my parents were divorced, so all I knew was her schedule, which did include summer vacation. That was unfortunate. Story 4. I was told to work hard in school. Then all the bullies would be the ones flipping burgers. I went all the way through graduate school to end up waiting tables afterward. Story 5. How hard it was to get a job. My parents always had a job when I was growing up, so it never occurred to me that finding a job might be hard. We started learning about careers and how to get jobs when we were 14, and it became clear that you couldn't just get a job when you left university. Story 6. That people tell children to pursue their dreams, but to adults they say, in my case with filmmaking, that's really hard, you have to know someone to do that. Story 7. Everyone at my school said you had to go to college to get a good job and not be poor. The local carpentry union came to a college fair, and with their apprentice program, you get paid to learn the trade. You also receive all the union benefits such as health, dental, pension, and a $40 an hour wage. It seemed ironic that my teachers, all college graduates who probably made $60,000 a year, some of whom probably had student debt, were telling me that college was the only path to success when they were making far less than blue-collar union workers. Story 8. I used to think adults do not poop at all. I had irregular bowel movements and had accidents at school a couple of times, and I would always picture myself as an adult, free from such issues. Turns out I was wrong. Story 9. Thought I would be able to eat whatever I wanted once I lived on my own, made my own money, and did my own grocery shopping. My metabolism killed that dream. Story 10. When I learned that adults don't really grow up, I don't mean asking about your favorite dinosaurs or playing on the playground. I mean that as adults, there are people who live for petty drama, people who aren't really empathetic towards others, generally cruel and bully others. I was always excited to grow up and be with more mature people. I couldn't wait because I thought grown-ups knew what was best and could be looked up to. Alas, just because your age increases doesn't mean your emotional and intellectual age does, and not all grown-ups are good guys. Story 11. Adults are routinely corrupt and immoral. As a kid, you believe people act like they should a lot more than they actually do, and then when you act like you should as an adult, you often get laughed at for being such a Boy Scout. Story 12. That grades don't really matter in elementary school. I had the chance to join the track team because other kids noticed I was fast. Instead, my dad told me to focus on my grades and not do sports. I found out after high school that those grades never really mattered, and pretty much everyone goes to high school regardless of how well you do. Story 13. That honesty and hard work don't pay. It is the liars and cheaters who are successful. My parents are both entrepreneurs. One is a financial advisor and accountant with small businesses as a specialty. My mother is a private dentist with the most affordable local prices. And we checked. Only those who took municipal vouchers were cheaper, but you needed a voucher to get their prices. I'm from Finland, by the way. Some cities offer you a voucher to get private treatment for cheaper to ease queues. And my parents struggled because they followed the rules. They were honest. While those who cheated, lied, and broke the rules were much more successful. Even if they got caught, the benefits outweighed the cost of getting caught. To this day, I still struggle with the fact that I don't have to be as honest, loyal, and dutiful as I am naturally because people who cheat and lie do better than I do. I'm the person who goes to the boss after a task is finished to ask for more work, while people I work with avoid the bosses and slack off as much as they can, yet get paid the same or better. I worked as a welder at a shipyard, and I did double what my partner did. While he just stood around doing nothing, I worked. It got so bad that I actually asked my boss if I could work solo because I got more done. What is the point of honesty and hard work when it does nothing but stress you out? We get taught it religiously and it doesn't pay. Story 14. That you cannot make a living doing what you love. Instead, you have to waste several years studying something boring in university and waste decades in a job you hate just to be able to do what you love on the side. Also, I thought I was going to suddenly become attractive as soon as I started high school. Story 15. Every time I heard a song on the radio, I thought an actual band was playing in the studio and they would just switch out between songs. I was very disappointed when I learned it was all pre-recorded. Story 16. I corrected an adult on how a word was spelled, and instead of thanking me, my mom gave me a dirty look, and the other person did nothing to show that they had learned something new from an 11-year-old. Story 17. That I'd have a period for the rest of my life, or at least until I was way old. I could barely fathom that I'd have to buy tampons or pads for my entire life. Story 18. The biggest bullies were the people with all the power. It was difficult in school, and I was sure it would be challenging afterward. I was right, but at least it's a different experience. Story 19. Realizing that about 15% of adults have the problem-solving capabilities to take care of their own problems, the remaining 85% just push it onto someone else when things deviate even slightly from their normal day-to-day activities. Story 20. That bad behavior is mostly ignored or rewarded, and people who behave and follow the rules get nowhere. My work partner verbally sexually harassed a client. He thought he was flirting, but it was extremely creepy. I expected him to be fired. He was talked to, but he was kept on for the rest of the season. I could not understand how he wasn't dismissed, and that's when I started to question the direction of my career there. Story 21. The fact that every math teacher in the 1980s and 1990s preached about how you have to learn to do this the long-form way since you won't walk around with a calculator in your pocket as an adult. Thank you, teachers. Thank you, technology. Story 22. High school and college graduates soon realize that they are not just going up against kids their age for jobs. You basically have to compete with much more experienced individuals. Look at 38-year-old Pete Buttigieg. He had his potential job taken by 77-year-old Biden. Millennials basically have to wait for baby boomers to retire or rest in peace. Story 23. The jobs you go to college for are not more desirable for any reason other than they are more secure. If anything, a lot of college graduate employees are more miserable than those in trades or similar industries, but they do not fear as much that they will lose their job. Story 24. I remember coming to the conclusion that adults acted like the more dysfunctional kids at school. In my mind, becoming an adult was like a master's degree in being human. I realized that most of the lying, aggressive, and ignorant kids would likely be the same as adults. Story 25. My grandfather was pretty well off before he died. I saw a bank statement one time and my jaw dropped. I asked him what it was like. He just told me that the more zeros you have on your bank account, the more zeros you have on the checks going out. He couldn't have been more right. Life is expensive. Story 26. I think the big upsetting thing for me was when I was about 12 and realized that people with $1 million could live off the investment interest alone in a better standard than the one we enjoyed. Story 27. This will probably get buried, but for me, it was the realization that I won't become tall, skinny, and beautiful just by becoming a teen or an adult. I always saw these beautiful, tall, and skinny girls. At the time, I was a kid and of average weight, and I was like, wow, I can't wait to look like them when I'm older, as if losing my baby fat would turn me into a model overnight. Story 28. The idea of you can be anything you want to be applies to everyone. No, we are not all destined to be professional athletes, popular musicians, or doctors. Many of us will put in a solid effort and fall short of our dreams. And that is okay. We just need to be a little more realistic. There goes my dream of being in the National Basketball Association. Being unathletic and 5'7" does not help either. Story 29. People will tell you it gets better eventually for the rest of your life in order to take whatever you have to offer. It doesn't matter if you're actually happy or not, and you most likely never will be. Story 30. When I was around 9 and my elder brother was around 19, I observed that he is not in touch with his childhood friends. Young me got sad, but when I turned 19, I realized that some of my childhood friends have become toxic. So, yes, when you grow up from childhood to adulthood, you lose your childhood friends. Story 31. That I could eat whatever I wanted. I mean, technically I can, but my dream of buying a pack of Oreos and eating nothing but the icing has never come true because, as an adult, what you eat has consequences. Story 32. The term peers is meaningless. There is only authority and power, the ability to acquire it, appreciate it, and use it decisively. Validation comes from successful implementation. When I was 5 and first learned the concept of peer pressure, I thought, well, my peers could be aged 0 to death, right? I had the idea to question why people have to fight. Why is everyone so nasty to each other? Why not deal with one another on a human level, acknowledging the common state we find ourselves in? Why not work together, extracting only the good ideas and discarding poor practices and bad ethics? I thought everyone who was alive was essentially my peer, and all opinions were valued until they weren't. Innocent until proven guilty, right? Suffice it to say, I was an angry young person growing up, into my teens and 20s, working for organizations and full of good ideas, but was always told I was never paid to think and in no position to make decisions. I didn't know I was bucking the status quo, questioning seniority, and rocking the boat. I was consistently overlooked, suppressed, and discredited. And now, I'm older and have moved so far past no love. I've lapsed into all love once more. I don't challenge superiors, managers, and gatekeepers because they were once my peers and are now my opposition. I challenge any opposition to good, because where there is power, there is authority. And I still love good like I did when I was young. Story 33. In my high school senior year, I felt very cynical. I felt like my graduation didn't mean anything because I was nowhere near done with school. How right I was. I spent the next 15 years either going to college or career training in one form or another. Story 34. Living with your parents after graduation will save you thousands of dollars that you could use to pay off debt or start investing. Forget all the stereotypes like, oh, you still live with your parents, ignoring your responsibilities as an adult, blah blah. You loser. Story 35. Hard work doesn't make you invaluable to a company and won't guarantee success. I think success comes from luck, heritage, or putting yourself out there in just an aspect desired. Honesty and keeping your nose to the grindstone are not guaranteed paths to fortune or fame. Story 36. I was pretty sure that mommy and daddy adults should live in the same house and love each other. Not be waiting until daddy adult is at work and being intimate with the candy man. Story 37. As a child, I used to have nightmares and terrible anxiety about the world ending, specifically through climate change, although at that time I didn't have a name for it. It was just this overwhelming sense of dread that would keep me up at night worrying and praying for a bubble of protection to care for my loved ones. As I grew older, that subsided, but anxiety plagued me through my 20s and manifested through issues with my own mortality. I always chalked it up to having issues with anxiety and depression. The panic attacks subsided with age. Now that I'm in my late 30s, it seems like all of my childhood nightmares that kept me up at night are coming true. Maybe the anxiety was justified? I don't know. I'm actively taking steps to battle my depression with medication, therapy, and making healthy choices. One day at a time. Story 38. Kind of the inverse, but they tell you your whole life growing up that money doesn't grow on trees. Bullshit, it does. Once I found out what marijuana was, and how easy it was to grow $10,000 a month. Holy shit, did the world change for me, shall. Story 39. When I was a kid, I didn't have a kindergarten graduation. I don't remember a 5th grade graduation either. I think there might have been something in 8th grade. Story 40. My biggest concern was that when I was little, I had tons of respect for adults. I looked up to them, I trusted them, and thought adults always wanted everybody's best interest. Now, after realizing all of the evil in this world and all the terrible individuals that walk amongst us, I feel disappointed. It's disheartening, and I've learned not to trust but a few people. Story 41. That childhood is supposed to be the best part of life. The only good parts were memories of my grandparents before they passed away. I wish I were old enough to remember more of them, but it is what it is. Story 42. I used to love reading a lot. When I was around the 4th grade, I realized that adults do not get to learn about everything in the world. They choose a set of topics to learn and work from and do not even get to finish a quarter of the books in the whole world. Though it's obvious right now, my world was shaken when I realized that no matter how fast I learned everything, I would never know everything. My nerd self was shaken. Story 43. My son too. I guess mine would be thinking I can do whatever I want when I am an adult, but then realized you really cannot. Work, school, kids, parents, money, etc. Story 44. My mother was working on her master's degree and went to school 1 or 2 nights per week. College comes around for me, and wait, what? 5 classes, each meeting 2 or 3 times a week plus homework. What the heck? Story 45. The fact that cooking real food is hard and time-consuming, and I may have to eat pre-made or frozen food, keep only making baked potatoes or fried eggs with a salad, and order takeout for the rest of my adult life.